I just want to thank you for taking time off to participate in our webinar today. So today's webinar is actually organized by Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry Career Women's Group. Like that's a mouthful. So basically it's SCCCI CWG. So I just want to introduce myself very quickly. So my name is Violet, as you can see on Zoom. So my name is Violet. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Lunch Actually. I'm also the committee member of the CWG Chinese Pursuits Group, and of course your host for today. So maybe before we get started, just want to check with everybody, how are you feeling today? You can, just use the chat to say hi. So you can see the chat in front of you right now. So you can just say hi, introduce yourself. I see some of you also use the reaction button to wave and things like that. That's awesome. So today's webinar, it's a bit different maybe from some of the previous webinars you have attended. We really want to make it, like more intimate, more engaging, more interactive as well. So, thanks guys. I see a lot of you messaging to say hi, like Winston, Ronnie, Fang Wu. Hi guys, thanks for joining us today. Yeah, so for the rest of you, don't be shy as well. Please feel free to just communicate and engage with us using the chat box. Okay, so today's webinar topic is Start Off 2021 Well, and boosting your mental resilience in times of uncertainty. So maybe before we start, I just want to put out this poll very quickly, okay? So like I say, we want today to really be very interactive. We really want to be hearing from you as well. So I'm going to launch the poll right now. You should see it right in front of you. So maybe before we go into 2021, which is, we are already 22 days in it, of course, I just want to hear, how was your 2020? Like, you can just choose one of the answers in front of you. Okay, so there are 3 answers, so not very difficult. It's also not a trick question. So please feel free to vote. Okay, I see that, okay, I think maybe there's a technical error, is it? Because we have already closed the vote and only 1 person have voted so far. Okay, sorry. We have relaunched the poll again. So please vote if you have not voted. Yes. So yes. It is very easy. You just need to click one of the answers and that's it. So yeah, see a lot of you voting right now. Almost the entire room has voted. If you have not, please join us. Yeah, don't be shy. Okay, we're already at 80% of the room have voted. Okay, come, let's be the majority. Please vote. Okay, so I'm just going to end the poll right now. Thank you for your participation in the vote. Okay, so you can see in front of you right now, right? I'm going to share the results as well. Most of the room, about 62% say that not great, but it was a great opportunity for me to get to know myself better and spend more time with my family and friends. Actually, that would have been my answer as well, if I was doing this vote. And then we have 31% who say terrible. I'm so happy that it is over. Onwards and upwards in 2021. Awesome. And that's definitely something that we are covering today, right? How are we going to start off 2021 well? And of course, we have 8% of the room, or in fact, actually one of our participants today who say that 2020 was awesome. I leveled up both personally and in my business and career as well. That's great. Okay, so nevertheless, whatever your answer would be, I think, 2020 generally has been a tough and challenging year for many of us, like for maybe our career, for our businesses. And of course, in 2021, businesses around the world are starting to see the mental health effects associated with isolation and working remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, so maybe you can also share with us in the chat, are you still working from home, or do you go to the office half of the time and the half of the time you stay home, or maybe you are in essential services and you actually, go into the office every day. So you can let us know in the chat right now as well. So I think, other than, of course, mental health effects associated with isolation from the office, I think, we also have we have also read many reports about maybe marriages suffering because of some couples not being used to seeing each other 24/7, and that has created, quite a lot of tension at home. And personally, I've also heard of friends and colleagues who have also experienced, high level of stress during these times. So that's the reason, CWG Career Women's Group, we decided that maybe it's a topic that we are all very very passionate about. It's something that we really want to share more. And that's the reason why we are very excited to have today's sharing session with our speaker, Miss Sha-En Yeo, who will be sharing with us experience and expertise on building mental resilience during times of uncertainty. First and foremost, of course, I want to introduce, like our speaker for today. So like I say, we are very excited to bring her on board to share with us about this topic. So our speaker for today, her name is actually Sha-En. So Sha-En is the founder of Happiness Scientist. Yeah, I love the name of a company. When I first came across it, I'm like, wow, such a wonderful company name, because even before I meet her, I already feel happy just by looking at her company name. So it's actually a training and consulting company whose purpose is to, of course, empower individuals and organizations to be happier using, like evidence-based research and the science of positive psychology. So Sha-En is actually a passionate believer in helping people to lead flourishing lives. So she combined her years as an educator, her deep understanding of psychology, and of course years of training experience, and she has developed a holistic learning experiences to help people like us and also organizations build sustainable habits, to flourish. So prior to founding Happiness Scientist, so Sha-En was actually an education scholar with the Ministry of Education and the founder of Positive Education. So she's also the first Singaporean graduate of the prestigious Master of Applied Positive Psychology program from the University of Pennsylvania, and she has empowered more than 100 schools and organizations and over 10,000 individuals with the tools and research of positive psychology. And Sha-En is also a best-selling author. In 2016, she actually co-authored the book Road to Success Volume 2 with Jack Canfield, which some of you might know of from the Chicken Soup for the Soul fame. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Sha-En. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Violet. I love your energy, and thank you for the very lovely welcome. It's nice to see some of your faces on this Friday. I'm so excited to be here today to share with you about the topic, and that is, how can we start off 2021 well? When I looked at the poll results earlier, I guess it wasn't surprising how we thought about 2020. In fact, if you look at it, a total of 93%, it was either not so great or terrible. So my goal today is to make it feel that 2021 is going to start off better than 2020 ended. Okay, so you're going to start seeing my slides. Today, the focus, of course, is to learn how to boost your mental resilience in times of uncertainty. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in 2021, but I hope that after learning today's strategies, you at least know what are some tools or some in your own toolkit that you can use, that's something from within that you can use to bolster your own resilience, so that no matter what happens in 2021, it can still turn out to be a good year. So Violet has already introduced me, so thank you very much. I just want to show you some pictures, just so you get a sense of who is this person you're going to spend some time with today. So 10 years ago, that was me in the striped hat with a very small baby. My elder daughter, Sherry, at the time was 10 months old. And I had just made a crazy decision, well, what most people tell me was a crazy decision, to stop working and go all the way to the University of Pennsylvania, which is located in Philadelphia, USA, to study positive psychology. I remember arriving there in the middle of winter, and you know how hot it is here in Singapore, right? So the first day we went to the courtyard to sign up all my documents and so on and so forth. And I started to ask myself, oh my God, what have I just done? I left the comforts of my home and went all the way there. But I was pulled there by a vision of a world which could flourish. And particularly at the time, I was a teacher, and I wanted to bring the tools and the science and the research back to Singapore schools. Over the last 10 years, of course, I've been doing that and more. You can see here, this is a group of people on Zoom, just like we have today. Of course, prior to Zoom, I'll be doing a lot of speaking, a lot of training, and yes, over the last 10 years, I've been to all kinds of organizations and spoken to all kinds of people, not just teachers, but also tour guides, engineers, business people, just like yourselves. One of my passion and focus for this year is to uplift women. I don't know if you're aware of this, but of course, here we are in the CWG group, but the pandemic has disproportionately affected women. And so my focus this year is to use the science and the tools to support women, to find their best selves, to stand strong in the face of uncertainty. Of course, for today, we want to go back to that. How do we remain mentally resilient? Many people find it really hard to grasp this concept because it's not tangible. So today, I'm going to attempt to make it tangible, something that you can feel, so that when you leave today, you can say, I know at least 1 to 2 things that I can do for myself when the going gets tough. The first one is mindfulness. The second focus is to adopt a growth mindset. And the last one is to tap on your strengths that you have already right now, your own resources and your positivity. So let's begin with mindfulness. We are going to go to the chat very quickly, and I want you to look at this picture, okay? In this picture, you see 2 characters. The first one is a man. The second one is a dog. Now, the man is looking at the 4 trees, but in his mind, it is filled with clutter. So many things, so many to-do lists. The dog is looking at the trees, and in his mind, he only sees the tree. So I want to ask you a question, and please type it into the chat box. Who do you relate to more? Do you feel more like the man on most days, trying to do one thing, but your mind is filled with 20,000 other things? Or are you more related to do you feel more related to the dog who can stay present in the moment? Please type in your answers into the chat. I want to see. Well, so some of you is the man, and you're like, haha. Some of you is both. Many people tell me depends on the situation. Weekday, work day is the man, weekend is the dog. Okay, so you have the best of both worlds. But as you can see in the chat, majority of people relate more to the man. The reason for that is that our mind, psychologists call it the monkey mind, because we are always thinking of so many things. And that actually produces the opposite effect of mindfulness. And the opposite of mindfulness is actually mindlessness. So no wonder we feel like, we are like doing all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, someone asks you, hey, what do you eat for lunch? And you're like, I can't even remember. So what exactly is mindfulness, and how can it help us to become more resilient? So mindfulness by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is actually a psychologist and researcher, states that mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in this particular moment. And best of all, you are not judging, right? You may be wondering, like, what do we pay attention to? We are paying attention to what we're thinking. We are paying attention to how we are feeling. We're also paying attention to the experience we have in the body. Later, I will be giving you an experience of what it means to be mindful. But the most important part of this definition is the last word, that is being non-judgmental. One of the reasons why we get out of the present moment and become more like the man is because we allow our emotions to get swept away. We judge someone's comment to us. When we forget to do something, we judge ourselves, we blame ourselves sometimes, or we blame someone else. Hey, why that fella suddenly cut in front of my lane? And that takes us out of the present moment, and that puts our mind on overdrive. Now, 2020 was a very unusual year. In fact, our minds were probably on overdrive all the time because the changes were coming at us fast and furious. No wonder we all felt exhausted, and maybe some of us do. So why is mindfulness tied to resilience? It's because when we can learn to be in the moment, this very moment, we aren't so disturbed by all the things that are happening around us. We feel more in control. And when we are more in control, we can make better decisions, whether it's for our business, whether it's for ourselves, it's also for our mental state of mind. If we are in control, then when we feel a certain emotion, we know what to do with it. But when we are mindless, everything just gets swept over our head like a tidal wave. Some of the other benefits of mindfulness are that we can focus better. We feel less anxious because we're not getting swept away by all the emotions that we're feeling or all the uncertain news that's coming at us. And very importantly, for those of you who are thinking, is there any use to this at all? When we practice mindfulness, we actually increase our gray matter, which means that we can remember things better and we can emotional regulate better. And in the context of business, we are better leaders. So you must be thinking, what is this mindfulness? Like, is there a magic pill that I can just take it now? Please give it to me. So before I tell you all the benefits, I've told you a lot, there are so many more. What I want to do is bring you through an experience of mindfulness, because nothing is more powerful than feeling it for yourself, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to get yourself as comfortable as possible in your chair. I think most of you are sitting. I can't see all of you, but I assume most of you are sitting. And what you're going to do in a few minutes is just listen to my voice as I guide you through a process which I call the STOP process. Okay? And all you need to do is just listen to my voice. And if you don't mind, close your eyes. Okay, so everybody, today, I'm going to lead you through a very short mindfulness practice. And all you need to do is just notice how you're feeling. If you find yourself falling asleep, you can keep your eyes open. If you find your mind wandering, remember, no judgment. Come back to listening to my voice. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to stop. You know, our mind is always going on and on, sometimes in overdrive, that we hardly give ourselves permission to stop. And for some of us, even when we want to stop, our mind is still continuing to process what has happened today, the day before, even sometimes when we're trying to sleep. So for now, for the next couple of minutes, I want to invite you to put down everything that's weighing on your mind, emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically. Maybe you feel that your jaw is very tight. Just relax it, or your shoulders are very tense. I just want you to put everything down for the next 2 minutes. Now, the next part of the process is T, and that is we are going to take deep breaths. Most of the time, we breathe in and out 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, and we're not getting enough oxygen into our brain. And we wonder why we are always feeling so stressed and anxious. So this time, we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds and hold. Breathe out for 4 seconds and hold. And I'm going to count you through it. All right. Let's breathe in. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. One more time. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Continue counting as we do the next part of the process, which is O. In this part, we are simply just going to observe or notice. You don't have to do anything. You just need to observe, as if they were clouds floating by and you're just looking at them. The first thing you're going to notice are the thoughts floating through your mind. Some of them may be positive, some may be negative. Maybe there's nothing particularly that you're thinking about. That's okay as well. The next part we're going to observe is our emotions. How are you feeling right now in this moment? Again, you don't need to do anything. You just need to notice it. For example, now I'm noticing that I'm quite calm. I don't have to do anything. Just observe it. And the last part is we're going to notice sensations in our body. You can start at the top of your head, and then your shoulders. And as we go from top to bottom, you just want to notice what's happening in that part of your body. Down to your lower back, down to your knees, and down to your feet. And now that we are more aware of what we're thinking, we're more aware of how we're feeling, and what our body is experiencing, we go to the last piece, which is P, proceed. Proceed simply means, based on what you've noticed, proceed on with the rest of the day with this new knowledge. Do something that is going to be helpful for you. Maybe you notice your shoulders are stiff. Maybe you want to give yourself a little massage. Maybe you notice that you're frowning a lot and feeling a bit angry. Maybe take a few more deep breaths and let the anger go. In this moment, you're simply doing something so that you can proceed on with the rest of the day with clarity and focus. In a short while, I'm going to be ringing a bell. And just ask you to slowly open your eyes when you hear the tail end sound of the bell. Okay, everybody. So welcome back. Let me get to this in a minute. Yeah, so the exercise that we just did is a very short mindfulness practice known as the stop mindfulness practice. And I brought you through 4 parts of the process. The first part was simply to stop. The second part was to take a few deep breaths. The third part was simply to be an observer. And the last one was to proceed. So I have a question for you, and I'm going to pull up a poll, and that is, which part of stop was most helpful for you? Okay, so I'm just going to pull up a poll. Let's go to poll 1. Okay, which part of the process, I'd love to know, was most helpful for you? Was it stop? Was it take a breath? Was it observe? Was it proceed? Let's have everybody try to jump in. We've got 20 people here, I think more than 20 people. Let's see which part of the process was most helpful for you. Okay, we've got about 50%. Let's try to have more people to jump in the poll. Okay. Right. Yeah, maybe another 10 seconds before we close the poll. Which part of the process was most helpful for you? Okay, all right. So I'm going to end the poll now and then share the results. Okay. All right. So as you can see, many of you, in fact, the majority of you, 88% of you found taking a breath the most helpful. And some of you found the stop and the proceed. Maybe the observe is something that we are not so comfortable and not as familiar with because we move from one thing to the other very quickly. But why does take a breath work? You see, most of the time, when we breathe in very short, 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, we are not getting enough oxygen. And when we don't get enough oxygen, our brain sends us a signal that tells us, you're stressed, you're anxious, right? And given the fact that since last year, everything was changing so quickly and our breath, right, we weren't paying so much attention to it, it's almost felt like we are holding our breath the whole time. And maybe we're only able to relax and breathe out, maybe for some of us when we heard the vaccine, when we heard phase 3. So we were holding our breath so much. Taking a breath is really important to calm down our nervous system and come back into focus and come back into center. So I want to ask you, and we're going to type into the chat, what would be the impact on the different areas of your life if you could just take time to stop, take a breath, just notice, and then be able to do something that's helpful for you in the moment so that you can proceed on. What would be the impact on your life? Let's type it in the chat box. Would it be positive? Some of you may say positive impact, so you can type in positive. Some of you say neutral, not sure how it's going to have the impact. And maybe some of you say maybe negative. So what do you think is the impact that's going to be on your life? Thank you, Winston. So positive impact. Yeah. So hopefully it gave you an experience, right, of trying to be more centered and more focused and come inward. So from the experience, what I want to share with you is a very recent study that was on the Harvard Business Review about the impact of mindfulness, right? Thank you, Eve, for saying you feel positive. Hopefully you sleep better tonight, Rosalind, as well. Eve feels more calm. Yeah. So let's go back to my slide before. And I want to share with you a study that appeared. So this is a picture of our brains. And what the researchers did was to do a before and after mindfulness practice, very similar to the one that you just did. And this part here, the orange and red part, is actually the amygdala, our brain emotional control center. Before the mindfulness practice, you can see that the yellow parts are more than the red in the left side of the picture. And that's because the amygdala is more activated. What that means is that we are more reactive, more triggered easily, more easily annoyed, more easily angered. But after 8 weeks of mindfulness practice, they found that it was less activated. Number one, the surface area was smaller, and also there were more red parts than yellow parts, which means that the person whose brain this is calmer, more focused, more clear, and then more objective as well. And that brings me back to resilience. When we are calmer, when we are more objective, we make better decisions, we are more in control of our emotions. That allows us to then notice what is in our environment and be able to adapt and pivot accordingly. So mindfulness is like a secret weapon that many people don't talk about because it feels so intangible, but actually it's a very grounding force. Okay, so that's mindfulness. I hope you enjoyed that experience as well. The second piece I want to move on to is the growth mindset. Now, I just want to get a sense of how many of you have heard of the growth mindset. If you have heard of it, please type it to the chat box. How many of you have heard of this concept called the growth mindset? Winston has heard about it. You may not know what it is, but if you have at least heard of it, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that is. Yes. So the growth mindset, thank you for your responses, was popularized by Dr. Carol Dweck, who's a professor at Stanford. And she defines the growth mindset as the belief that learning and intelligence can grow with time and experience, which means that our brains are not stagnant from the time that we're born, even to the time now. Our brains are continuing to develop and grow. And the growth mindset is one of the most important things we must have in times of uncertainty, because change is coming so quickly. If we are adaptable and we know that our brain can adapt to the changes, then we're more likely to face the challenges with resilience rather than giving up. So let's look at the distinction. In the growth mindset, people who have the growth mindset may say some of these things to themselves. I can learn to do anything I want. For example, go online to have meetings? All right, I can learn it. Learn how to do Zoom breakout rooms? All right, I can learn it. They see failure as an opportunity to grow. Okay, the first time I tried to run a meeting, I was on mute for the first 15 minutes. But then you realize, hey, now I can learn. Maybe I have a checklist to check that. Before I go on, I make sure I'm off mute. Growth mindset means we can pivot, we can be adaptable. On the other hand, you may have also noticed in your midst, or maybe even for yourself at some point, that maybe you have some elements of the fixed mindset. Fixed mindset thinkers normally think I'm either good at it or not. I either can do the tech or I cannot. I can either speak in public or I cannot, right? I can either facilitate this session or I cannot. And when you're black and white, it means that you're very rigid. And when you're rigid, it's very hard to adapt. Sometimes they feel frustrated. And when they're frustrated, they tend to give up and feel deflated. And sometimes they may even start to blame the external environment. Why did this COVID come just when I was at the peak of everything that I wanted to do? They get frustrated and maybe they'll decide, maybe this is just not the thing I'm meant to do. So the fixed and growth mindset sounds, I've given you some phrases, but I want to give some clear examples and I want to invite you to participate in a little exercise on the chat. Or maybe, Violet, we can call some people to unmute to share with us. Maybe that'll be more fun. Okay, so let's see. So I give some examples and I'm going to ask for you all to jump in, okay? So the first one, in the fixed mindset may say, I can't do it, right? Or they may say, it's too hard, right? Or we may say, I'm so scared to fail. But you know what? In 2020, I don't know. I've lost count of the number of times I failed, whether it's on an online platform or even offline. When I had my first training session offline, I felt like I was a baby all over again. I didn't know what to do and I was scared. So if I'm having a fixed mindset and I say, I can't do it, what does the growth mindset say? The growth mindset might say, I can't do it yet. I'm still in the process of learning. Now I'm going to ask you now, and Violet, if you know some people, if you can ask them and invite them to join in, what would the growth mindset say for it's too hard? What would the growth mindset say for it's too hard? Let's see who's here.
And you look very ready to answer.
Okay, come and let's hear from you. If you can unmute, what would a growth mindset say when it's too hard? And thank you for being sporting, and I can see you trying to unmute.
It will get easier.
Yeah, it will get easier, right? Thank you so much. I see some other people jumping in the chat as well. Rosalind says, it's hard, but I can try. And I'm guessing it will get easier as well. That's your typing, right? It will get easier over time. Yeah, it's too hard now. It will get easier as we get along, right? So one of the examples is this as well. It's hard, but maybe I can try to find different ways to do it. Find ways around it. How about the next one? I'm scared to fail. Let's call someone else. Thank you, Anne. Suddenly, all of them disappear behind the screen. Shall we invite Winston? Winston, how about you chime in for us, even if it's just your voice? What can you say instead of I'm scared to fail? Is Winston there? Or maybe Rosalind? Still thinking. That's okay. No problem, Winston. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
It feels scary to fail, but I can try.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rosalind. Yeah,
Sorry, I'm on the go actually.
No problem. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody is jumping in as well. It feels scary to try. I'm scared, but I can give it a try. I'm excited about what I can learn. Yeah. So one of the examples that I put here is failure means we are growing and learning. You know, the first time I went on Zoom, as I mentioned, not only was I on mute for the longest time, I didn't quite know how to figure it out. When I tried to put people into breakout rooms, I put myself into the breakout room, but everyone else stayed in the main area. But from then, I learned to understand it a little bit more, and the remaining sessions became so much better. So if we have the growth mindset, we can relook at the situations that we are encountering and be able to see a way out. One of the key distinction factors between a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset is that you can, number one, take action. Number two, find different ways to solve the problem. And as a result, change can be made. And that keeps you adaptable and hence more resilient. So let me give you an example of Sin Mui Heng Dim Sum. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. Now, prior to COVID, they did a lot of their supplies of their dim sums to restaurants and hotels. But of course, we all know what happened when the whole COVID started happening a year ago. Restaurants and hotels, people couldn't travel, people were stuck at home. So how did they put on their thinking hats and adopt a growth mindset to pivot and to change the way they did their business? So the first thing they did was to notice what was happening. Most people were staying at home. So they redeployed their production resources to drive retail products. That was after circuit breaker, so that people can go out and then expand their range of supermarket offerings. And for some of us, the supermarket was the only place that we could go to, our once a day kind of outing, right? Where we could get out there. And by driving their retail products, by expanding their range of supermarket offerings, what happened for Sin Mui Heng Dim Sum was that they had their top sales in 60 years of their operation, right in April 2020, in the middle of the circuit breaker. So I want to cite this example because sometimes we say, wow, you know, it all sounds so nice and as if it's very easy to do. And of course, during the midst of challenge, it can feel very, very difficult to say, oh, suddenly I need to change the way I think. But if we are able to keep that openness, if we are able to see different pathways out of our problems, if we put on the growth mindset, hey, maybe we can have our best year ever. So that's an example. Very simple question to just round up this particular section. Now, which mindset will help you to be more resilient? Okay, let's type it in the chat. Yes, fixed mindset or growth mindset? Right? Really simple question. Yes, the growth mindset, because with the growth mindset, we take action. With the growth mindset, we see the light at the end of the tunnel and we can become more resilient, right? So we learn from Sin Mui Heng, right? Best year in 60 years. Maybe 2021 can be that year for us as well. All right, I hope you're enjoying it. If you're enjoying it, please put a plus sign in the chat box. Put a plus sign in the chat box or type yeah in the chat box. Thank you very much, everybody. Great. Wow, plus, 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 plus. Yeah, jump out of your chair already, is it? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. So we want to move on to the last part, which is strengths. Now, strengths isn't referring to the muscles we have in our arms. It is referring to our character, personality traits. And you can see this list of strengths over here comes from the VIA Institute of Character, which identifies 24 different strengths that human beings across the world, whether we're in Singapore, US, Hong Kong, China, wherever we are, we can say that if we look at this list of strengths, we can resonate with one or two of them and we can understand what they are. Now I have a question for you. If you're going through a challenge and you want to know the best way out, would you try to rely on your strengths or would you rely on your weaknesses? Let's type it into the chat box. Would you rely on your strengths or your weaknesses? Quick question. Yes, okay, yes, we rely on our strengths because we have to dig deep. But these strengths, as I mentioned, I'm not referring to our biceps. We're referring to the strengths of our character. What this means is that this is our internal resource, not how much money we have, not how much fame we have, but our character and who we are. When things get challenging, we need to tap into our strengths, our inner resource, because when we know what our strengths are, we can feel more confident. And when we are confident, we feel more energized and uplifted. And the truth is, research also supports this. When we are trying to solve problems, we need to be in a positive state of mind, which means we need to tap on what we are good at doing. Think about it the other way. If you tried to solve a problem when you were feeling lousy, when you didn't know what you're good at, from your weaknesses, you probably can maybe come up with one or two solutions, but they may not be fantastic solutions and they may not be able to solve the problem that you wanted because your frame of mind was not right where it needed to be. Let me give you an example. Let me share an example of ready bihun, homegrown bihun in Nanyang Technological University. Now, ready, this chap over here, before COVID, he had spent a year saving up money and perfecting his bihun recipe. And he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He wanted to launch his bihun business in February 2020. Just when he was about to launch his bihun business in the canteen of NTU, COVID hit. And he had already ordered all the supplies. Now, if you were ready, what would you be thinking? I'm sure some of these thoughts went through his mind. Why me? Why now? After 1 year? Maybe some of you had this experience as well. Why is this happening right at this moment? And maybe for a moment you felt deflated, right? Like, you know, this is horrible. Some of you said last year was terrible. And Reddy could have done that as well. But Reddy had a strength. And his strength, besides perseverance, was kindness. So you see him here packing packets and packets. They weren't for sale. Reddy noticed that there were many people during the time of the circuit breaker who were affected and could not buy food for themselves. So he went to use all the supplies he had and decided to just cook anyway. He told himself, I am going to cook for these people who have no food to eat. Number one, I get to use up my supplies. Number two, he could then get their feedback whether the bihun is nice or not. So that when he relaunched, he would have real-time feedback. It achieved so many purposes because Reddy was tapping on his strength and also his growth mindset. Magic can happen when we know what our strengths are and we know how to leverage and find the opportunity to use it. So I want to show you a video. Yes, I think Violet has posted where you can find out what your strengths are. Yes, you can go to viacharacter.org to take the survey. And of course, the most important part is to find ways to tap on your strengths. Now want to show you a video to see how did all these different animal characters face the challenges in their life.
It's smarter to travel in groups.
Okay, before I tell you about Aisha, I want to ask you, what strengths did the penguins have? You can type it in the chat box. What strengths do you notice the penguins had that enabled them to defeat the killer whale? Yes, unity, right? They came together. What else? What else do you think they had? Teamwork, yes. What else? Someone told me they're very creative, right? They went to the edge of the ice. Now, courage, thank you. They didn't just all jump down, right? If jump down, somebody would have gotten eaten. Now, let me ask you, as the penguin is sitting there, just imagine the penguin is a human. Do you think it's gonna say this to itself? Imagine if it said this, I'm just a fat, blobby creature. I'm just gonna sit here and let the killer whale eat all of us. I'm fat and blobby, I can't do anything anyway. Might as well. Imagine if they had done that. And that is what I mean by using your weaknesses. Maybe some of them would have gotten eaten. Maybe some of them would have gotten away, right? But in this case, they used their strengths and they were able to face the challenge. The same goes for the ant. If they had thought of themselves, I'm so small, what can an ant do? They would probably have 10 or 12 of them been sucked up by the anteater. But coming together, they formed a ball and they defeated. Or rather, they put a stopper in his nose. Yes, Chiu Fong, thank you. Using turn your weakness into your strength. But first of all, you need to know what it is and then be able to use it. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story to just end off this particular segment on strength before we move into positivity. So years ago, I went to attend a talk by Nick Vujicic, who is the man with no arms and no legs, Jason Chi, and Paralympian Aisha Samad, whom you see here. I was very inspired by her story. For those of you who do not know her story, she was a shooter, a national shooter with all her limbs intact. When one day, when she was traveling in China, she felt a really bad pain in her stomach. She was hospitalized, and that began a nightmare 6 months in hospital, in and out. And at the end of it, the doctors told her, we have to cut off your limbs to save your life. And of course, she needs her limbs, right, to shoot. But she also wanted to have her life. To cut a long story short, she went ahead with the amputation. And of course, you may be asking now, did she become resilient overnight? No. In the months following that, she sunk into depression and felt that she was no longer useful, no longer valuable. One day, her teammates came back to her and said to her, Aisha, come back to shooting. She asked herself, can I even entertain the hope of doing so? But she looked at her 4 limbs and she said, hey, I don't have fingers, but I still have this top half of my arms. Maybe I can still shoot. So with the encouragement of her teammates, she went back to the shooting range and she learned all over again how to shoot in her new self. And she showed up every single day at the shooting range until she was able to take part in the Paralympics and win some medals. You see, I chose this picture in particular because she asked an artist to write three very powerful phrases on her leg over there. And it goes like this: I want, I can, and I will. Now, for some of us, last year was terrible, which means that, like Aisha, we may have sunk into maybe even a depression. We may have asked ourselves, where is my life going to be? And maybe at that point you felt, I don't think I can pull myself out of this hole, just like Aisha. But she tapped on what her strengths were. Of course, she had love and support, but she tapped on her passion for shooting. She tapped on her perseverance and willpower to show up every single day at the shooting range, because she believed she wanted something, she believed she could do something, and it just translated into, I will do something. So I want to share this story because all of us here, whether it's in our business or our personal life, we can be in control and create a story for ourselves. The external story is that there's a pandemic going on. Everything is very uncertain. Yes, just like Aisha. The whole world came crumbling on us. That happened to her. But you can also decide for yourself to create your own story, and that is a strength story. So I'm not going to ask you to answer it now, but I want to ask you to think about it. What is your strength story? Because for Aisha, it's I want, I can, I will. If you can find that story within yourself, you have an inner resource that nobody can take away. You have an inner resource that no matter how uncertain 2021 is going to be, that is going to be your story, because you have already decided that this is what you can do, that is what you are going to do, right? So I hope that after today's webinar, you do spend a little bit of time to think about what this year is going to be like for you, and what is the story you want to tell at the end of 2021. Is it going to be a good story, or is it going to be an undecided story? So that's the strengths. The last part is to tap on positivity. I'm a happiness scientist, and I cannot do any webinar without talking a little bit about being positive. So to end off on a very positive note, I want you to also tap into your positivity. Positivity are things like emotions like gratitude, like hope, like love, like excitement, like joy, because positivity is a very powerful force. Many people think that positivity is just about smiling, emoji, I'm okay. But there's a lot of science that supports that positivity is also helpful for undoing the stress that we feel. And my golly, 2020, wasn't it a year of stress? Now, we can't use stress to beat stress. We can't use negative emotions to beat stress. Sometimes you can say, hey, I go to the boxing gym and box out all my stress. Yes, but how do you feel after that? You feel good. That positive emotion has what psychologists determine called an undoing effect. In order to undo stress, we have to do something intentionally positive. And when we can do that, we recognize that even in tough times, there are bright spots. Yes, maybe I didn't do so well financially last year, but I got to spend time with my family. Now, I want to make a distinction that this is not the same as toxic positivity. Toxic positivity means I will be positive no matter what. I have no roof over my head. I'm going to smile and tell everyone I'm okay. Now, that is fake positivity. We're not talking about that. Neither are we talking about just being blindly optimistic. That means it's like this analogy of a pilot trying to land the plane. The pilot is not going to be blindly optimistic and say, oh, I can't see the ground, you know. It's a bit foggy. I never wear my contact lens properly, but okay, the ground is there. I'm going to land. That's also not what we're talking about. We're talking about recognizing that, yes, we are in this reality, but we can make a choice to focus on what's going well, to focus on what's positive, because that lifts us up and allows us to take little steps forward towards the goals that we have set for ourselves, towards making 2021 a much better year than it was last year. So some examples of how to do this. The first one is you could focus on the emotion called gratitude, in which case you could journal, or you could share 3 good things today and why you're grateful for them. So I'm going to ask you in the chat just to share one thing, something today that you are grateful for. Now I want to share, it can be very, very small and very simple. Can I share with you what I'm grateful for? I'm grateful for this little alarm clock. because it tells me how much more time I have. Now, if I didn't have this, I might be off track with my time. Something small like that, it's something we can also be grateful for. So let's go to the chat. What is one thing that you are grateful for today? Yeah, it's big, yeah. Yeah, what is something you're grateful for today? Let's hear from you. Food at home, nice. Beginning the weekend already, having a nice brunch. Beautiful weather in the morning. Coffee, yeah. Having a nice lunch. Good health, that's wonderful. Kisses from your boy, Nico. That's precious. Good food and friendship. Joining this meeting, thank you, Angwu, for coming. TGIF, woohoo, weekend coming. Your PC is in front of you, yes. Thank you, everybody. You know, sometimes we take some of these things for granted. And with gratitude, as I mentioned, we are reminded that lots of good things are happening around us. The question is, where do we want to focus our attention? On all the uncertain news? Yes, we can keep track of that. But maybe we can also ask ourselves, can we also focus on something that's gonna make us feel good and empowered? Nice, Rosalind. You went to pick up your daughter, huh? Yeah, my daughter is downstairs wandering around. Okay, the next one is create or look for little moments of joy in your life. Now, I want to share this picture. Anybody recognize what coffee this is? This was a fad that came out actually from Korea. Please type it into the chat if you recognize this fad. A very different special kind of coffee. Yeah, Dalgona coffee. So during the circuit breaker, I was running out of my wits thinking of how to entertain my 2 children back home, when suddenly I saw my friend post that she had made Dalgona coffee. So instead of waiting and saying, how come you get to have Dalgona and I don't? I went to check the kitchen and found that I had all the ingredients. And so I put my daughter, who loves anything from Korea, and we spent about 20 minutes figuring how to make it, making it, and then sipping it. I had most of the coffee, she had most of the milk. But that was a little moment of joy in the midst of all that, which reminded me that there are bright spots that we can focus on. And if we only focus more on those bright spots, a little bit more compared to the negative spots that we're looking at, that makes up the reality that we are. And if we are facing uncertainty and negativity around us, we need these reminders. They are no longer bonuses. They are things that we need to consciously create for ourselves. Okay? So to end off, I want to ask you to type in the chat. Please share a moment of joy that you experienced recently. Right? So my moment of joy came, recent one was having a staycation with my family just before school started. And this moment of joy was very precious for me because we had been so busy working throughout the whole year. The kids had also felt like they weren't having much outdoor time as much as they like to, or going for holidays. So having that precious moment to just be in the pool without any devices at all was just a very precious moment of joy. So please share in the chat so that we can also copy other people's moments of joy. What is your moment of joy? Let's see. Eve, gifting during Christmas. Nice, yes. Walking in the parks. Yes, that's my new favorite activity. Botanic gardens is my favorite. Jogging with kids, able to visit the grandson. Lovely, Winston. Walking your daughter. Every day is a moment of joy. Wow, Michelle, see? That's how you create a great 2021, right? Walking around the neighbor, exploring hawker food. What do you eat? Chiu Fong. Cleaning and decorating. We all became Marie Kondo. See, there are so many moments of joy if we only pause and think about it. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. Stay K, huh? Yes, yes. Creativity and cooking. Yeah, cooking is also one of my moments of joy. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for sharing. I've got some ideas here. Maybe I need to do some decorating. Actually, today is my dad's birthday. So I maybe need to go and decorate the place to celebrate his 81st birthday. All right, so in summary, I hope that the time you've had with me gives you an insight about how you can start 2021 well, how you can use research-based tools to guide you to build up your mental resilience so that the uncertainty of 2021 is only something external, right? Let's be a realist. It is going to be challenging externally, but if we know and we have these tools internally by practicing mindfulness, staying calm, staying objective, staying focused, bring ourselves to a steady state. If we adopt a growth mindset, we can think of possibilities when at first we thought there were none. We can problem solve when at first we thought we're going to give up. And last of all, tapping on our strengths, our inner resources, so that we can turn weakness into strength. I'm going to borrow that. And our positivity, so that we're always reminded that amidst negativity, there are always these bright sparks that we look at. And I believe if you implement one out of the three, 2021 is going to be a fantastic year for all of you. So I'm going to bring up the poll, my last poll anyway. And I want to ask you, which of these strategies do you think you will be applying to boost your resilience? So please vote. Which of the strategies, is it mindfulness? Is it growth mindset? Is it your strength and positivity? Which one will you be using to boost your resilience? I want to see. Nice, nice. Let's have more people vote. I think we have about 40%. Fantastic. All actually, okay, I should have had the option of all of the above. Don't want to be stressful, later nobody type all of the above then. Okay, any more? Let's have a few more people jump into the poll. Okay, maybe 5 more seconds. Okay, so let me share the results. So I see it's quite evenly spread out actually, but of course the majority, as you can see, is to adopt a growth mindset, right? So having this growth and flexible mindset is going to carry you through for the rest of 2021. Thank you again for your sharing. Thank you for your time. I don't take for granted that people will obviously come on a webinar just because it's there. So I'm very grateful that you're here with me today, and I would love to stay in touch with you. Please come look for me if you want ideas on happiness, how to be resilient in your organization or your personal life. Come and connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions apart from today, that's my email address. Over back to you, Violet.
Thank you so much, Sha-En. Sha-En, you're amazing. It's like, you know, like Sha-En asked us just now, she said like, okay, what time must I finish by? And then she saw on the schedule 3:30, right? You guys look at the clock just now. It's like exactly 3:30. Yeah, she's
And
like
my clock confirms it.
Yeah, she's super precise. And I'm so amazed like by how much Sha-En has been able to cover, like, I think in less than an hour. So I personally have learned so much because I know some of you have come in a bit later just now, right? Just want to do a very quick recap, you know, on top of what Sha-En have mentioned just now, right? So I think first and foremost, she shared with us what mindfulness is about. So I think I really love the illustration that she shared with us, which was mindful, as in F-U-L-L, versus like mindful. And she also shared with us this cartoon where there's a man and a dog. Okay, so all of you guys who have, you know, like listened to Sha-En's talk for the last hour, right? So do you feel more like the man or the dog right now? So I think, are you able to more be like the dog? You know, let us know in the chat, you know, like, because I think just now a lot of us say that we are all like the man, right? So like maybe now are we a bit better like after this? And the other thing that of course Sha-En also shared with us is the ways that we can become more mindful. Thank you, Chiu Fong. Chiu Fong say, yeah, more dog now. Yeah, me too. I also feel like I can be more like the dog now. Yeah, and also say like doggy. Okay, so Sha-En also shared with us the 4 steps, right? Okay, now I'm going to test all of you guys, right, to see whether you have been listening just now. So what are the 4 steps that Sha-En have shared with us on how we can be more mindful? Okay, I give you the acronym now. Okay, so it's STOP. Okay, so want to let us know what the STOP stand for. And can also help some of our participants who, you know, like have just joined us a bit later, so we can help them recap as well. So what does S stands for? You know, you can let us know in the chat. You know, everybody type what does S stands for, what does T stand for, what does O stand for, and what does P stand for. Okay, waiting for your answers. Don't be shy. Let's see who is the best student. You know, we might give out a best student award like at the end. Okay. Hey, everybody's so quiet. Is it like my thing like is lagging so I don't see your answer, or you are still thinking? Okay. Thank you. Okay, and say P is for positivity. Yeah, that's correct. P can be for positivity too. So maybe we can add that in. P for positivity is good. So yes, thank you, Chiu Fong. Yeah, I think Chiu Fong, okay, I think you win Best Student Award. Okay, so S stands for stop, like take a deep breath, that's for T. And of course, O is for observe, and then P is for proceed. But I like what N has put in as well, P for positivity, that's super important. And of course, the second thing that Sha-En shared with us is about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I think a lot of us say that we might not have heard of this. Some of us say we have heard of this. So I think that's definitely something to remind us as well. And I love the examples that she have shared with us, right, on like how people focus on growth mindset instead of fixed mindset. And of course, last but not least, Sha-En also shared with us how we can tap on our strengths as well as positivity. I really love the videos. I thought like what some of you have shared, the animals are like super creative, right? Like I at first, when I was watching the penguin one, I thought like, what are they doing? Are they like leaving everybody behind and just running off? Oh, but no, you watch a bit more, it's like, wow, they are so creative, right? Like using their weight, and then they managed to defeat the shark. So super awesome. And I think so many stories that Sha-En have shared with us, and I think one that really touched me very deeply is definitely the story of Aisha. And I love how Sha-En have shared that it's just like how many of us, like being hit by COVID and not knowing what to do, like how Aisha suddenly lost her limbs, how is she then going to continue with what she can do? And I love the 3 things that she has asked an artist to write on her prosthetic limbs, right? Which is I want, I can, and I will. So thank you so much, Sha-En. That's amazing, like it's amazing amount of information that you have shared with us, ideas you have shared with us in this short period of time. So now we'd like to really open the floor for questions, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I do. I've already written down all my questions, but maybe I thought rather than, just me talking, please, do share your question in the chat, or if you are open, you can always unmute also and ask your question to Sha-En as well. Okay, so any takers for the first question? Okay, I think maybe they are still typing. Okay, so Sha-En, I actually have one of my community members that unfortunately, she had a last minute meeting. She couldn't join us today, right? So she has a question for you. So the question is, what is an easy and sustainable way for someone to get started to meditation? Like someone who is like a total beginner, like never tried it out before.
Yeah, so a very easy way is, I think many people mistake meditation for just sitting there and breathing. It almost feels like, what am I supposed to think about? What am I supposed to do? You feel very silly actually doing the exercise. But one of the best ways I think to get started is to to just sit there is very challenging for newbies. So I would say use some part of your body to remind you what you are trying to do. And that is coming into the present. So a very simple activity that I like to share, and it works for both adults and kids because it's so simple. It's called Take 5 breathing. And we just need to use our hand. If you want, we can, I'm trying to make sure I don't block my own face. And we can do it together if you like. So if you want, everybody can take out one of your hands. And we're going to use the other hand to put at the bottom of our wrist. Okay. And so we can breathe in. As we breathe in, we move our finger up. Breathe in. At the top of our finger, we pause. Then we breathe out. And then we breathe in again. And then we pause. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe in. Breathe in. And then the last one. Yeah. So that's one of the fastest way, and it's kinesthetic, and you have to be doing something. So you'll automatically be more present than if you were just sitting there and trying to breathe.
Wow, I love that, Sha-En, because that actually kind of connect to my second question, which is a question from myself, actually. So the question which you already have answered, my question was like, what is the best way to help a child to start meditation? And actually, my daughter is very kinesthetic. So, like when you were sharing that, I was like, wow, this is definitely going to be the perfect way for me to like just get her to focus on something. And then it's just so easy, you know. It's like you say, not something that people just kind of like sit there and they're like, oh, am I just supposed to sit there and like, you know, whatever, right? Like, just having
Yeah,
something
and
to
you might as well
focus
levitate
on.
in the process.
Yes, yes, yes. So thank you so much for that. That's super awesome. So
You're
thank you.
welcome,
We
yeah.
see some questions now in the chat. Thank you,
Okay.
guys. So we have the first one from Chiu Fong. So Chiu Fong say, is it possible to be up and positive all the time, or it's normal to actually have a up and down time? How to not stay down for too long?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. And I get this question asked all the time. Say, Sha-En, if you teach happiness, does it mean you're happy all the time? Then I tell them, you know, I'm a human, I'm not a robot. Robot can press happy mode and be the whole time, right? But I'm just a human being. I have all the experiences of sadness, frustration. You know, one of the things that happened in the middle of COVID was that my business partner decided to go back to a job. So while I was trying to keep my business going, suddenly I did not have a business partner. So I do go through my down times. But I think the most important part is to answer that third part of the question, how not to stay down for too long. So we have to, number one, become aware of what we're thinking and what we're experiencing, right? So for that moment, I thought, oh no, like, how am I going to keep this alive? Everything that she was doing, now I have to do, blah, blah, blah. And it all can feel very negative at the time. But what Susan David, who is also a psychologist, suggests is that we don't run away from the difficulty. Many of us run away. And because we run away, we don't actually deal with it. It gets shoved under the carpet. We need to just be able to sit with it. It's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant, but when we are able to do it, then we actually allow ourselves to process it a little bit more, right? And then that's when all the strategies I taught today can kick in. But if we are running, we haven't acknowledged it, then all the strategies are not going to work because all the emotion is still going on inside you. Yeah, so Chiu Fong, that's what I would suggest. It's okay to be down. You know, society will tell us, get over it quickly. But we have different timelines, but also recognize that you have the tools to get through it.
Thank you, Sha-En,
Yeah.
for that. So we have another question here from Anne, which is, I guess, a bit related to Chiu Fong's question as well. So, you know, what is the fastest way to snap out of a negative state? Yeah. So, for example, like trauma or bullying or, you know, loss, like death or business losses, right? And I think the next question that's also probably kind of sort of like related to the first one is also, you know, like when managing, you know, like this negative state, I guess sometimes we could be very angry, right? So how important is forgiveness when it comes to anger management?
Yeah, I think the fastest way, and it's going to sound very cliched, but science has proven it over and over again, is that you need to change the state that you're in. And by change of state is that we have to do something physical. And you choose what you like to do. Is it yoga? Is it going for a walk? Many of you talk about going for a walk. Is it HIIT? So I like to do HIIT when I'm very angry. I just do like so many star jumps. And what happens is that physiologically, you're allowing the stress to diffuse and get out of your system. Does it mean that the stress will go away the next day? No, but it's the process of doing it to you know, day by day, step by step. If it's a big trauma, one exercise session is not going to get rid of the trauma, but it's at least beginning the step, right? That's one. Second is be with people whom you can trust and who love you to support you. The one thing that we need, and we found very clearly last year, was positive social connection was the thing that kept us all going. Whether it's the people who dropped food for us at our doorstep in the middle of circuit breaker, right? Things like that. Or just reconnecting with your loved ones after the circuit breaker and not seeing them for 2 months. That feeling is what we need. So one of the, I would say, you know, fastest is relative because we all have different timelines. But how we can speed it up is by doing some of these things that actually, again, supported by research to help the physiology of your body get the stress out of your system. Yeah. So next question, how important is forgiveness? Well, I mean, in my experience of trying to practice forgiveness, of course, it would be ideal if you can. But I think that in the moment, sometimes it's very hard to think of forgiving someone who has wronged you. So I wouldn't say, let's be idealistic and boing, let's be forgiving straight away. But I think it's acknowledging and recognizing that maybe you're angry, that you have been hurt, right? And then making a decision whether you want to stay in that anger and hurt or not. Very often I find sometimes when we stay angry, we are satisfying some of our own goals, right? Because when we are angry, anger makes people bigger. Let's put it this way. And when we're angry, people don't come and bully us. So sometimes we get angry and we stay there because people won't come and touch us. But forgiveness is to help who? You have to ask yourself. Forgiveness is not to help the other person. Forgiveness is to help ourselves. Yeah, but it starts with deciding that forgiveness is what you want to do because you know the anger in the long run is not going to be good for you. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you don't feel angry. You're a human being. So feel it, but after you've felt it, ask yourself, what do I want to do with it now? I hope that makes sense.
That's amazing, Sha-En. I love how you say that anger makes us bigger. Like, never really thought about it until you brought it up. And it's true, like sometimes by staying angry, we are actually satisfying our own goal.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think like you say, once the awareness is in and then knowing like who is that forgiveness for, and a lot of times like you say, it's actually for ourselves. Yeah, when we can forgive someone, actually we are having, something lifted, on top of our shoulder as well. Okay, so keep those questions coming, like a lot of amazing questions there. While waiting for you, I have one more of my own question that I would like to ask. So I think, like Sha-En, I love your sharing about the growth mindset and fixed mindset, because I think, when people are more aware of that, that is definitely going to be very helpful. So I think my question is, are some people maybe more predisposed to a certain type of mindset? It's like maybe some people are just more growth mindset, some people are like more fixed mindset, or maybe even a question is like, are people born with it? And how are some of the ways to help someone to really, of course, move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset?
Great question. So let me address the first part. I mean, just like pessimism and optimism, it's a combination of nature versus nurture. So for example, in my household, my dad is optimistic, sometimes to a fault. He cannot see clouds when it's always sunny. But my mom is pessimistic, also sometimes to a fault, on the other end of the scale. And I leave you to guess now which side I've adopted. Your guess, huh? It's not what you think. So anyway, yeah, I was a very pessimistic person many years ago. Yeah, and I always thought that was my destiny, like, oh, I'm just meant to be this person. I had a very victim mindset. And I think a lot of it was because of the nature. My mom, right? I may have inherited it from her. So similarly, growth mindset, I could have inherited some of that from my parents, but the environment, what I was exposed to, can also make a huge difference, right? So although I was a bit pessimistic when I was born, thankfully through my schooling and education, I started to be able to see things differently, right? And started to adopt a more optimistic mindset. In fact, it was a teacher in my secondary school who helped me be on this path towards understanding more about myself, towards understanding more about positivity and happiness. So it can make a huge difference. So that's all I want to say is, if you notice yourself in the fixed mindset at this moment, there's hope because something can be done. And that leads me to the second part of your question. How do we move from the fixed to the growth? Number one, we can ask ourselves powerful questions, right? When we say, I give up, or let's say we go with, I can't. Then we can ask ourselves, well, you can't do X, but what can you do? Very often we only see things in one way, right? I can't do Zoom, but what can you do? Well, I can turn on the computer. I can Google how to use Zoom. I can ask someone for help on how to use Zoom. And maybe by using that part, I can finally know how to use Zoom, right? So we ask ourselves powerful questions. When we say, I don't know how to do it, we can ask this question: who can I ask for help? Who knows this that can support me? Right? When we encounter a challenge and we say, I give up, we can ask ourselves, well, what is something that is still going for you right at this moment? Right? So when we ask powerful questions, we are like unlocking our fixed mindset and opening up space and possibility for a growth mindset. So that's one thing I would suggest, that we just turn that statement around and ask ourselves the opposite question so that we can open our perspectives.
Thank you, Sha-En. So, Nico, I think have a follow-up to that question as well.
Mm.
So I think, definitely asking powerful questions is, is definitely a great way. So I think Nico's situation, she's saying like how to help change the mindset of a 6-year-old boy who always say, I cannot do it.
Well, sometimes when they say I cannot, we want to, before we go into asking the question, sometimes you need to use a truckload of empathy. Because what they see, they cannot, is not what we think and not what we see. For example, I cannot, my younger daughter says, I cannot go into the room by myself because it's dark. Actually, we have to ask ourselves, what is she experiencing? And what is she actually trying to say? What she's experiencing is that she has fear because the room is dark. So she said, I cannot. But actually what she's also trying to say is that I want you, mommy. That's what I want. So before we go into wanting to change the mindset, maybe we exercise empathy and try to understand where they are coming from first, right? And then we can ask those questions. Or we can ask a question such as, well, once we have asked a question, say, I cannot do it, okay, then we can ask them, list all the things that you can do, or we can give them a history of the things that they last time could not do and now can do. Hey, remember last time you couldn't go toilet by yourself, now you can. Hey, remember last time you couldn't ride bicycle, now you can. Because then you are giving them evidence that they actually can. And just now, at the moment, they can't do it just yet, right? So they also feel like, oh yeah, I've had experiences where I've done it before, so this is not new to me. Sometimes they forget and we can remind them of how to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Sha-En.
You're
So we
welcome.
have like maybe time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So, like if you have some dying question and then you are like being very nice, right? Trying to give everybody else a chance first. This is your time to like write in your question. Like Sha-En here, as you can see, like she's super knowledgeable. She's very experienced in this. And I think, those of us who have been on the webinar since it started, have really learned a lot from her. So, don't waste the chance of asking her any other questions that you might have. Yeah. So meanwhile, I also want to hear from everybody. It's like, what is your biggest takeaway from today? So, like definitely Sha-En have shared with us a lot of nuggets. However, that if there's one thing that you really feel that is something that you can apply straight away, from today's webinar, because I think when we arrange webinars, we also want to know that you are actually finding it useful, you are going to like really apply it, right? Okay, so let us know, what is the one thing that you find the most insightful, like you are really going to do something about it, something that can really help you in this 2021. Okay, so I see the answers coming in. I also see a question. So, the rest of you can continue to share with us what your biggest takeaway is. But let's take Fang Wu's question. So the question is, how to deal with negative people around us?
Great question. You guys ask lots of great questions. Well, just like earlier when I said, the environment around us may not change, but we can be in control. So if I were doing a coaching session with my clients, I would put 2 concentric circles. In the center circle, I would ask you to write down everything that you can control. And most of the time, it's just the area that you can influence, which is me, myself, and I. What I'm thinking about, what I'm doing, my attitude, my actions, my emotions. Sometimes we can't control everything, but we want to write down in that circle everything that we can control. And in the outer concentric circle, we want to write down everything we can't control. So in this case, we can't control how COVID spreads. We can't control who is the president. We can't control how business policies change. We can't control if our staff suddenly say they want to quit. We can't control that. And similarly, we can't control negative people around us. But what we can control is the amount of time and exposure we spend with these people who are negative or whom might be toxic, right? So I don't know if you know of a friend around you who is like that. No matter how good the situation is, he or she will find a way to turn it the other way. Or complain, right? Or say, no, this one sure cannot one, the wet blanket in your friend community. So the choice then becomes on you. If the friend say, hey, want to go and have dim sum today? Makes me feel like eating because of that picture just now. Then you can say, can I reply yes or no? If that person is very negative, you can say, hey, maybe, is it okay that we just have a catch up on the phone, right? We can say no. So I think it's about managing that, managing our own expectations also. And if that person is always negative and we recognize it, then if it's a family member, it's especially difficult because you're going to be in contact with that person all the time. Then it's a question of acceptance and drawing boundaries. Okay, drawing boundaries very well, saying no at times, and not be afraid to express it in a nice and respectful way. Sometimes we just keep everything thinking that they should know, but actually a lot of time they don't know or they don't want to know.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Sha-En. So I think I just heard this story recently, which is about a couple, a husband and wife who have not talked to each other for 40 years.
Oh
And then
my.
it's like when finally they found out why, it was quite shocking because apparently the husband was just so angry with the wife that when they first had kids, the wife just kind of like ignore him. But I mean, of course, as a mother, like just spending a lot of time with the kids, right? But because they just never had that communication. Yeah, so sometimes like you say, we think the other person know, right? Like maybe the husband might think that, oh, you're doing this purposely, but obviously the mother is just being focused on the kids because she's a new mother and things like that. So I think that is so important to not assume that the other person actually know what we are thinking. Yeah. Okay, so thanks guys for sharing. We see that some of you say that you find the stop that most useful, reading exercises, reframing is very important, and seeing things positively, learning to say no. Awesome. So I hope that all of you have enjoyed our session for today, because like what Sha-En have shared with us, we can't control what happens to us, but what we can control is how we react to it, how we respond to it. And I think today she definitely has given us an arsenal of like tools and weapons on how to deal with this, right? So so at this point, I really want to, on behalf of the SCCCI Career Women's Group Committee, I want to thank Sha-En for speaking with us today, and I hope all of you have enjoyed the session as much as I did. So through today's sharing, I'm even more confident we definitely can start 2021 well, and we definitely can bring back more control into our lives, despite like I'm sure there might be more challenges ahead. So Sha-En has shared with us her context just now, but we will flash it up again. So, if you have really enjoyed what we have heard today, and maybe you feel that you want to contact her, or you want bring her in to share with your colleagues and things like that, like you can contact her. As you can see on the screen, you can do a print screen now, or take out your phone and take a photo of it. And right now I also want to share with you, we actually have an event coming up very soon. So it's actually our flagship event of the year, which is the SCCCI Career Women's Group IWD, which stands for International Women's Day. So it's going to be held on the 28th of February, which is a Sunday. It's a 1.5 hours event, and it's going to be super awesome because we have a very, very exciting, I would say, line of speakers that will be joining us. So the idea behind this event is, that we'll be, of course, be talking about like how to deal with, all these challenges. But I think more importantly, we are going to be getting, like entrepreneurs, business leaders to share with us their own experiences as well. So we have Mr. Robin Hu, who is the head of sustainability and stewardship group of Temasek International, will be sharing. And we also have a very unique sharing session as well with, I think first ever, I have not been to many of these sharing sessions, where it's going to be like parent and child, okay? So it's going to be moderated by Professor Annie Cole, and then we are going to have family businesses, okay? So family businesses, definitely they have displayed resilience, and they have succeeded over multiple generations, right? So we'll be listening to the sharing of our panelists. So our panelists include mother and daughter team, Miss Claire Chiang and Miss Horan Yong from Banyan Tree. So I think some of you might be familiar with this luxury resort brand. And we also have Dr. Gansi Kim and her daughter, Miss Chin Wei Jia from the Health Management International Group, HMI Group, and Mr. Patrick Chong and his daughter, Miss Sabrina Chong from Lux Asia. So it's going to be a really awesome event. If you have not already signed up, I definitely urge you to sign up for this event. It's going to be over webinar and 1.5 hours, and it's complimentary as well. So to help us better serve you, those of you who have maybe joined us for the first time, or even you have joined us many times, we definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback on how we can improve. So definitely, please take out your phone right now and just scan this QR code and do up the survey form, because we want to hear from you. How did the event go? What do you like? What do you not like? How can we improve? And of course, any future topics that you'd like us to cover in future. And last but not least, I also want to share with you the QR codes of our Facebook page and also our LinkedIn page. So if you have found today's event very useful and you'd like to have the playback, because I think some of you maybe join us halfway and you might have missed the first part of it. So not to worry, we'll be putting up the recording of today's events on our Facebook as well as our LinkedIn page. Okay, I just want to make sure I've covered everything which I have. So today's webinar has come to an end. So thank you so much for your wonderful participation. I really enjoyed, hosting this event today with our wonderful speaker, Sha-En. And you guys have been such an amazing audience. Thanks for, taking part, being positive and sharing your thoughts as well. I wish you great health, prosperity, and all the best for 2021. So take care, stay safe, and hope you join our future events. Bye.
Bye.